Hey y'all, hey! Welcome to another edition of the Black Gold Texas Tea Show. Of course, I'm your host, Sweet Tea, and some of you might call me Texas Tea, and that's just fine with me. I am so very happy to be with you during this fabulous month of October, which we all know is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And I have some great guest in store for you today. One of the things that I really wanted to bring forward and talk about is breast cancer because, these days there's no way you could even look with anyone and they have not been impacted by breast cancer, especially, but some form of breast cancer all the time. Everybody. It's happening often. Just for 2025 alone, there's over 316,000 new cases of invasive breast cancer among women, and there's over 59,000 non-invasive cases. And unfortunately, there's over 42,000 deaths that have been the result of breast cancer. It's very important. And I thought, who better to give us more information about the disease as these two beautiful ladies that you see before you. So I'd like to introduce you to my guest for today's show. First, we have just wave and we'll get to you in a second. We have Miss Pat Bennett. She's really Miss Patricia Bent. I added Bennett because I was trying to make her French, but she's Miss Patricia Bent. And then below is a face that you've also probably seen before, my dear sister, Miss Linda Suitt. I am very excited to have both of you here. And I'm going to start with you, Patricia. Tell us a little bit about your journey, how you found out that you were affected by breast cancer and what were your next steps. We'll start there.
Okay, great. Uh, Thank you so much for having me on. I really feel honored that you asked me to be a part of this segment of Sweet Tea. I'm Patricia Bent. I'm originally from New York, and
Mhm.
I've been living in North Carolina for 19 years. I can't believe I've been here that long. It's been a long time.
Yeah.
And I'm fortunate enough to meet Teresa through church. And so, yeah, we have that in common, of course. In regard to your question about my journey, so I was taking a shower one day and examining my body. I was young, or so I thought, as it related to breast cancer, but I
Mhm.
felt something strange. There was something there that hadn't been there previously. It was a lump. And so I decided to go see my primary care physician and ask about it. So I went to the doctor's office. He examined me. He said it didn't feel like any cancer he had ever felt. So he sent me to his surgeon. I went to the surgeon. He examined me. He said it didn't feel like any cancer he had ever felt. And so I wasn't satisfied because I knew something was different about my body. I went to see my OBGYN, and he said, well, it doesn't really feel like any cancer that I've felt before, but
Mhm.
just to be on the safe side, I have a surgeon that I really trust and I want to send you to him. And so I went to see the surgeon, and he said, let's just be safe and do a biopsy. So
Wow.
that is where it all began. But again, just being persistent and being diligent, knowing that something was different about my body.
And paying attention is what I heard you say. We talk about the importance of self-examinations, and you just explained why that's so important. We'll get back to you in just a second, Patricia. Thank you so much. And y'all know I love my little big sister. And so, Miss Linda Suit, tell us about yourself, if you like, and
Mhm.
what about your journey and how you first found out.
Well, my journey actually began at the beach. I was on vacation and never had done self breast exam, and I decided I'd check the girls out. And the first place I touched, it was a nodule. I said about the size of probably about the size of a maybe a quarter, and it was firm. So I'm a registered operating room nurse and had worked with many surgeons. And so as soon as I got back home, um, I called one of the surgeons that I knew that did that kind of surgery
Mm-hmm.
or to do a biopsy, and he was out of town. So my next step was I called another surgeon, which they say is a general surgeon, and he is also a plastic surgeon too. So I was thinking, okay, if I have to have any reconstructive type surgery, that I would want him to be the one. Well, um, I'm going to back up just a little bit, but I wanted to say that I was in my 40s. I was probably about 45.
Okay.
And I had been following American Cancer recommendations for how often you should get your mammogram. And so I had my mammogram on schedule. And so this was I was thinking that maybe this was just a cyst. And anyway, I made the appointment and was able to see him. And so they first did a repeat mammogram, and of course they saw the mass. And he said, "Well, we want to do a ultrasound." And the purpose of the ultrasound was to determine whether it was solid or had fluid in it. And of course, it looked solid.
Mm.
And he said, well, since you're here, why don't we just do they call it a needle biopsy, where they just go in with a needle and take a little bit of the tissue. And then they get the results on the same day. Well, I was there all day. I started in the morning and I didn't leave there until late in the afternoon. But the results came back and he said, I have some bad news for you. And I'm like, bad news? Wait a minute. He said, it's cancerous. And honest to goodness, I didn't hear anything after the word cancer. My mind went blank.
Mm-hmm. I understand that. I really do because and I hate to interrupt, but I'm going to say this real quickly. One, Patricia, you would think that I would have known this story. I've never heard it.
Mm.
And I think that says something too, because there came a point in my life, possibly around the same age, 45, and we know that when you go in to see your physicians, they ask you about family history. And because I went in for my mammogram and my sister was at that point a breast cancer survivor, I had to have a surgical biopsy. And like you says, when he said that, I didn't hear anything else he said.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we hear that kind of news, it has a way of taking your breath away.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be really challenging because we need to be paying attention because they're
Mm-hmm.
sharing information that's important for us to hear. But I think even in hearing both of you, before we move forward, I really want to emphasize the importance of self-examination and timely mammograms and
Mm-hmm.
be aware of what that is based on your age. And I think the younger you are, they're more often. Is that right, ladies? At least annually or?
Yes, yes. I think at that time they didn't start doing mammograms until I think you were in your 40s, but it wasn't
Oh,
yearly. it was I'm thinking was every 2 years because my last mammogram was a year and a half before I found the lump.
That's interesting. Patricia, what has
Hmm.
your experience been?
I was 42 when I was diagnosed,
Hmm.
and I had had two mammograms, and nothing showed up on the mammogram. So,
Hmm.
to your point, and to Linda's experience as
Hmm.
well, self breast examination is
Yes,
critical. And
yes.
you may not want to find something. None of us want to
Mm-mm,
find
mm-mm,
Right.
anything, right?
mm-mm.
But living is very important to us. And so, in order to ensure that we're doing the best by our for ourselves, we need to be diligent in doing self breast exams.
Absolutely. And if you're uncertain as to what that looks like or how you do, are you how you are to conduct
Mhm,
a self exam, ask your
mhm,
doctor for sure. But don't be
mhm,
afraid. Look, we Google everything else we want to know.
Yes.
mhm.
Don't be afraid to get a YouTube video that
Yeah.
shows or Google it and find out because, as Patricia said, we like living, so it's imperative that we
Mhm,
do all that we can to continue to live. So I'm also going to ask that once you heard the diagnosis,
mhm.
what was the first thing that you that went through your mind when you heard that? I know
Um,
I know
I,
Linda. I know
yeah,
you like me.
yeah.
You couldn't really hear anything else.
No, I didn't hear anything else, but because of, I guess, the expression on my face, that our family, our face will tell the story.
Yeah.
And I guess I look kind of crazy. And so my surgeon said to me, he said, I know that that you may have questions. He said, but what I want you to do is to write down every question that you may have. And when you come back for for your next appointment, we'll go through every question and answer them. Um, and then the other part of that is that I really didn't have to do anything after he said that. He arranged every single step that I needed to take going forward.
See, that's a blessing. And I'm not just picking with my big sister, but
Mhm.
what I see is one, working in the health industry makes you aware of a
Yeah.
lot of things that a lot of us would not even be thinking about.
Mhm.
Two, to be connected enough with a physician that you could get in and get seen and be treated
Mhm.
and carry and handled in that fashion. That may not be everybody's experience, but it's
Mhm.
certainly a blessing to you and how you can present yourself in your job even that
Mhm.
allowed you to have those kinds of connections. How about you, Patricia? What was the
Well,
first thing that came to mind for you?
it was very interesting because, again, I saw several doctors who almost assured me that nothing was wrong.
Mhm.
So I wasn't thinking anything about it. I had an appointment to go back to get the results of my biopsy. And I stopped by my godson's house to see him. And his mother said, "Where are you going?" And I told her, she said, "You aren't concerned?" And I said, "No, I'm not
Mhm.
concerned."
Um,
Because, I was going on their word. And so when I got there, the results had actually not come in yet. But he proceeded to say, you have many options. You're young. I was
Mhm.
42. You have a lot of options. And he
Mhm.
laid it out for me very clearly and told me, explain to me, if we see this, then this is your option. If we see that, then this is your option. So as I was in his office, the results came in and he began to read them to me. And as he was reading them, the tears started to flow because
Mhm.
I knew what the only option was that I
Mhm.
had.
Mhm.
And my first thought, I actually had three thoughts almost like simultaneously back to back. The first one, you're going to laugh because I was a manager on my job, and my director was going on vacation the following week. I was the youngest manager on the team, and she asked me to sit in for her. So I was really honored that she asked me. And my very first thought was, oh my goodness, I'm not going to be able to sit in for her next. That's
I'm not
crazy, right?
surprised. No, Partly because I know how dedicated you are to doing a great job in whatever it is that you do. So I respect that. I understand. And I might have had a similar thought. Not so crazy at all.
It was crazy. And so the next thought I had was, why me? And right behind that was, why not me?
Yeah.
Mm,
Why not me? I know God, I have a relationship with Him. Why
yes.
not me?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
those were my three thoughts, back to back to back.
And I can tell that as you're talking about that, one of my other questions was certainly going to be, how did your faith or your spiritual life play a role in the whole thing, and especially your healing? Because for a lot of folks that may not have that same rooting, it's challenging for anybody, I would
Mm,
think. Because even I just had a biopsy, and they were able to
mm,
confirm that I have very dense breasts, and so I
mm,
would need to be aware of that for future mammograms, because someone
mm,
else could see something and I'd want to make them aware of it and make sure that that was in my records. But even with that, like I said, my breath was taken away. And I'll say this real quickly, but our Aunt Bond, was there with me, and I'm praying, and I wanted to repeat the 23rd Psalm and couldn't remember. I could
mm,
not remember it to save my life.
mm,
And then I started to freak out, and I thought, oh my goodness, God is going to be so disappointed with me that I can't remember his word. But God always sends angels. And this little nurse came in, and she saw that I was really starting to unravel. And she went and found a Bible and brought it to me. So I know that even that was huge for me, but I know that our faith, when we have it as our foundation, can truly serve to support us when we're dealing with that. So,
mm,
Patricia, as you mentioned, you remembered whose you were. That's my translation of what you said.
Yeah.
mm.
How did that really help you? How did your faith really support you as you heard the diagnosis and as you went through the other parts of your journey with breast cancer?
I don't know how I would have come through it without my faith, because my faith is everything.
Mhm,
And immediately following the appointment, the surgeon sent me to a plastic surgeon. I was by myself at the appointment, and he sent me to a
mm,
plastic surgeon immediately. So I'm driving, tears are running down my eyes. I'm going to a plastic
mhm,
surgeon's office. And
mm,
when I get there, he told me, he said, you're one of the luckiest people in the world. And I said, why is that? And he said, because life will never be the same. You'll never look at life the same again. And he was absolutely correct.
mm,
I never looked at life the same, but for some reason, Teresa, I went into it just knowing that God was, that I was going through it for a reason, that He
Yep,
was using me for a purpose.
that's right.
And I
mhm,
remember that Sunday, that was on a Friday when I got the diagnosis, and Sunday I went to my pastor's office, had never been in his office before.
mhm,
And I said, I'm getting ready to have surgery on Tuesday. So I got the diagnosis on Friday, and Tuesday I was in surgery. And so that Sunday, I went to his office and I said, I know that God is getting ready to use me. I know that he is, and I know that I'm going to be all right, but this is what I'm going through, and I need you to pray with me. And he
mhm,
prayed with me. And on Tuesday, I was in surgery.
mhm.
Yeah.
The support is necessary. And
Mhm,
Linda, I know, I've learned more about your journey this
mhm,
many years later than I
yeah,
realized as you were going through it, because I was
mhm,
younger and you didn't really talk a lot about it that I recall. You may have talked more about it
mhm,
to mom, but I don't know if you talked to
mhm.
me about it at all. What was it like for you, and how did your faith support you?
First of all, I wouldn't have talked to mom about it because mom was
It
already
was already
passed away.
gone. I didn't
Yes.
realize.
So
Okay.
so I was actually diagnosed in 1993.
Okay.
And as I told you before, after the word cancer, I didn't hear anything else. And like Patricia, now when I got in my car, I screamed and I hollered, 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 and I cried. And when I finally got myself together, the 23rd Psalm was the Psalm that came to me, that the Lord is my shepherd,
That's,
and in him there's no lack.
that's right.
And the verse that really I honed in on was, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, not even death itself, but the shadow of it,
The shadow
that
of
I will fear no evil, because what? He's with me.
with
Yes.
And I knew that after I repeated the 23rd Psalm, it was like a peace, as they say, that surpasses all understanding, came over me. And after that, it was like I went through whatever it was that I needed to go through, and I knew that God was with me, that He was with me, and that I was in His hands,
right.
and that He was going to take care of me. And that's exactly what happened.
I can't even imagine, ladies. Like I said, I only had a test
Mhm.
and I know I was freaked out. But when you look back at your journey and you consider some of your toughest days, whether it was through various levels of treatment or
Mhm.
otherwise, what would you say gave you strength to push through those tough days as they were happening? And share some of the tough days with us, if you will. Patricia?
Yeah. So some of the toughest days, there was a shot that I had to take, and I believe it was called Neupogen.
Mm.
And I took that for a week, and it attacked the joints in your body.
Mhm.
And when it attacks your joints, your entire body is racked in pain. I mean, from the crown of your head to the very sole of your feet, your earlobes. Very
Mhm.
rarely do we experience pain in our earlobes, all around our ear. Everything was in pain. I had to go to the emergency room. I was just racked, like doubled over in pain. And, I just kept the Bible by my bed
Mhm.
and I would pick it up. But one of the scriptures that stands out to me is Philippians 4, I believe
Mhm.
6 and 7. Be
Mhm.
anxious for nothing,
Yes.
but in all things, by
Mhm.
prayer and supplication with thanksgiving,
Thanksgiving.
let your
Mm.
requests be made known unto God, and the peace of God that passes all understanding will
Mhm.
guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. And that
Mhm.
scripture just really stayed with me. And, because Paul just speaks so much in that particular
Mhm.
chapter of Philippians, and, how to be content in any situation. And so, I was just thanking God for life. And I think the main thing that we focus on, or need to focus on when we're going
Mhm.
through anything, is that we're going through it.
Going through it.
We're going through it,
Mhm.
that there is another side to it. And
Mhm.
whatever the other side may be, whether it's favorable from our perspective or not, I believe that I am just passing through this life to get to the next one. And so, whatever going through looks like, I'm okay with
Mhm.
it.
I know
I
that.
can honestly say that the experience of breast cancer helped me to
Mhm.
understand how strong my faith really was.
Mhm.
I didn't understand it until then.
And interestingly enough, that may have been part of it. Have you considered my
Mhm.
servant Job? Right?
Mhm.
That might
Mhm.
have been part of it. Only the Lord knows for sure. But I love that you say you were going through, because there was some pastor or somewhere I've heard them say,
Mhm.
anything the Lord takes you to, He can lead you through. So I
Mhm.
appreciate you bringing that back. So, Sis Linda, tell me about some of your toughest days and how you push through those.
Mhm. Well, the thing that I'm going to say, I did a 3 month trial. It was a 3 month trial, chemo, and it was given intravenously.
Oh, wow.
And what I did learn through that is that I would have to do it actually on the weekend, because it kind of knocked the wind out of your sail. And I think I did it during the week one time, and I was unable to work the next day. And so I learned from that I couldn't do it. I would have to do it on a Friday, so that I would have Saturday and Sunday to recover. and even in that, it was, I think it was maybe an hour more of it to go in.
Oh my gosh.
But they had to suspend it before the 3 months was up because my liver enzymes were out of whack. So they had to suspend that, and they put me on another pill that I can't remember the name of it, but it took the majority of my hair out. Um, and my hair was my glory at the time, but I thought about the song that India.Arie sang, I am
Oh,
not
you're
my
not my
hair.
hair. Yes.
Not my hair. And
Mhm.
so I had to put things in perspective that,
Yeah,
as Patricia just said, um, eh, God had something else for me to do. And my life was it was more important than my hair and my appearance.
for sure.
Um,
For sure.
but
And let me ask you this too,
yeah,
sis, because I don't know that you remember this, but didn't you do
mhm.
radiation too?
I did. I did chemo first. Um, uh, Actually, I'm sorry. I did radiation first,
Okay.
and chemo was kind of extra 25% survival rate. And
Okay.
so I did that just to extend my time. And so the chemo the radiation was at that time was every day, Monday through Friday, for 6 weeks.
I didn't know how often you went.
Yeah.
The only
Yeah.
reason that I remember the radiation, and so, um, Sweet Tea family, I'm just telling you this because, as someone who should support your family or friend who may be going through the treatment, be aware that your support is necessary. My sister, as you probably can tell, is a very proud person. And one morning, I guess it was must have been in, I had come, I was there visiting, or I didn't know if I'd moved there yet or not, but I know I was there visiting. And she came into the room where I was. We were getting dressed from work that morning, or getting dressed to go out that morning. And she came to me, and I don't even know if you remember this, Linda. She said, I need your help with this dressing. Today,
Mhm.
it's just a little
Mhm.
bit more, and I need your help. And I didn't
Mhm.
think anything about it. And when I went in, Patricia, to help her, and she turned her back to me, it was open flesh. It's what it looked like to
Mhm.
me.
Mhm.
And that was the first time I had an inkling of what she was having to endure every day.
Mhm.
And I'm only saying this because it's really unfortunate that, as scary as the C word has become, it has also become quite normalized. And when you don't deal with it yourself and you
Mhm.
hear about the experiences of others, you truly have no clue of what that journey can be like.
Mhm.
And I knew that when my sister asked for help, it took a lot out of her because she would have done it herself. And I also knew that if I started to cry when I saw her back, she would never ask for help again. So I sucked it up myself, and I helped her get the dressing in place. And I asked if she needed anything else, and she said, no, that's all for now. And I went back into my room and cried quietly into my pillow,
Mhm.
because it was the first time I really understood or had an idea about how devastating this disease can be. And
Mhm.
so I applaud both of you, because and praise the Lord for sure
Mhm.
that you are even here, because having to go through that and endure, and you've only shared that much with us. I know God is great, and greatly to be
Mhm.
praised. And so I
Mhm.
want to ask, Patricia, how long have you been cancer free?
Well, the experience that I was sharing with you was my diagnosis in 1998.
Okay.
Fast forward 18 years later, I was diagnosed the second time with breast cancer. I had been going for my mammograms regularly every year, never
Mhm,
missed one.
mhm,
And this particular year, 2016, they called me back. And I knew when they called me back that something was wrong.
mhm,
And to make a long story short, they were very small dots that they saw. So they could
mhm,
just go in and get rid of it and everything will be fine. We scheduled the surgery and everything was wonderful. I was on the way to the beach. I got a phone call and they said after looking at the ultrasound that it was bigger than they thought it was.
mhm,
Um, 3.5 centimeters. Does that sound right? Centimeters. I always get
mhm.
those.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And so they needed to reschedule because it needed to be a different kind of surgery. And
Mhm,
when they called me back to schedule it, they said, okay, you're scheduled on August 2nd. And at that point, I said, August 2nd, that's my birthday. And they said, would
mm.
you like us to reschedule it? And I said, no, I don't want you to reschedule it because I will always remember when God brought me through this, when He brought me
Mhm,
out of this. And I was stage 3B, and I had been going for my mammograms every year. And then also had an MRI, and it
mhm.
ended up being 3.8 centimeters
Wow.
because they only saw the connections on the end, Linda, and they
Mhm.
didn't see the mass that was in between the end point.
Oh, wow,
My goodness.
wow, wow.
My goodness.
Yeah, so that was very intense. I was older. I
Mm,
was 60.
mm.
So, real quickly, Patricia, help those of us who are not familiar with the terminology when you say stage 3B.
Yeah.
Can you help us understand what that really means?
So typically there are, and Linda, please correct me if I'm saying
Mhm,
something incorrectly. There are four stages, right?
mhm,
Typically, stage
mhm.
one, two, three, and four.
Mhm.
Right.
So with
Mhm,
breast cancer, when you get to stage three, it's the A, B, C, and D. So
mhm.
I was
Before you
stage,
move to stage
before
4?
you move to four.
Okay.
Right. Mhm,
And four means typically that it has metastasized throughout your body.
right.
And right, so I was 3B, and so I had an intense chemo um, uh, a regimen.
Regimen.
It was called Red Devil.
Mhm,
And yeah, that's what it was called. It was a 5 hour
Mhm.
treatment every time I
mhm.
went. And it was intense.
I'm sure.
And I was, like I said, I was older, so, it took a greater toll, I think. And
Mhm.
medicine had changed so much in those 18 years. The first time I had I had a mastectomy, and I would go 3 times a week to the plastic surgeon to get saline injected to expand the
Breast
breast
tissue.
cavity to be able
Mhm,
to receive a prosthesis,
mhm,
right?
Oh,
mhm.
wow.
Yes. And then the second time, I only went once a week because, they're not trying to see you, Linda, as often as they
Right.
did back then. And so
Mhm,
every time I went once a week, and when I went, they gave me so much saline. It was so
mhm,
painful. I would just come home and
mhm,
sit straight. I couldn't move. Like if I moved like that, I was in excruciating pain.
mm,
And so it was different from the first time for sure.
mhm.
Wow. 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 And
Yeah.
so, did you do anything from a cosmetic
Well,
perspective?
not the first time. The first time I only had a lumpectomy, and I was in stage one. And they did remove. They did test 13 lymph nodes under my arm, and they were all negative. As Patricia was saying, they do stage one is anything that's less than that's 2 centimeters or less, and so my mass was right at 2 centimeters, and so it was stage one. But I was also diagnosed a second time
Okay.
in 2021,
Yeah.
and that diagnosis was called DCIS, which stands for ductal carcinoma in situ. And it was picked up on my mammogram. I get an annual mammogram, and it was picked up on my mammogram. And I was wondering, why was it taking so long? Because usually they do your mammogram, they give you the letter and say you good to go for another year. But that's not what happened that particular day in 2021. They had to do a repeat mammogram. And then she said, well, you need to talk to the radiologist. I'm like, well, now what is this all about? And so after I talked to the radiologist, he said, well, he said, we see some calcifications in your breast, and can we do a biopsy? And so they did several biopsies. And I don't know if Patricia's ever had a biopsy like this, but you are on your stomach with your boob hanging out of this little opening, and then there underneath with the needle guided. I think it's guided by another machine to see exactly where they need to gather tissue.
Wow.
And so then it came back. It did come back as DCIS, and I had to. They put clips in the place where the calcification was, and this particular it was in the same breast, but this was a totally new diagnosis. It had nothing to do with the first diagnosis,
Wow.
and the stage was 0. And so the treatment was I had to go. I had to go and have it have the removed it, and they used a instrument in the operating room that would be able to pick up these where they had put the clips, so they would know where to remove the tissue. But the other treatment is considered. They say that you can do a mastectomy, but I chose to do a simple mastectomy, so I still have a portion of my breast left, and I had to do 4 weeks of radiation treatment following that. And I'm now on a anti cancer drug that's called tamoxifen, and I have to do that for 5 years. And in 2026, that will be my 5th year, and so I will be hopefully free of that.
Yeah. In Jesus' name, we're going to claim that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah,
The,
yeah,
the
yeah.
other thing that I remembered, and I could be wrong, Linda, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought that after you were diagnosed cancer free, if it
Mm-hmm.
was for 10 years, they said that it wasn't coming back. Do I have that all right?
No, no, that's it. Once you are diagnosed, you have to. They require you to have an annual. It's no longer a screening mammogram, but it's more intense
Oh,
mammogram.
okay. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, this information is very helpful, even to share your own personal experiences of this. And we will pray in Jesus' name that you will both be cancer free. I have a couple more questions that I do want to ask. And
Okay.
one of those questions to both of you is when you think of the word survivorship, when you think of that word, how can you describe what that means to you in one word, if you can? I'll give you a second to think about it, because when you're going through this, and Patricia, I'm listening to you and wondering if you went through a lot of this alone, or did you have support? I know both of us are single, and so that's something to consider, whether or not, and I don't know if you travel with your job as much as I did, but that could leave you in a very isolated space. So what do you think? What would you say for that one word?
The one word that I think of when I think of survivorship is favor.
Mm-hmm.
That's the word for me. favor, God's favor. Um, our thoughts are not his thoughts, our
That's right.
ways are not his ways. And, I'm sure we probably all know people that have not survived breast cancer.
Didn't
I don't
discover it
know.
even.
I don't know why he chose me to live, but I'm grateful and I just call it unmerited favor,
Amen.
you know,
Amen.
not that I'm deserving,
Mhm.
but there is a purpose and a plan.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And even our bishop said this weekend, when we were in church, it was if your eyes open, there's still something he has for you to do. And
yes.
so the question is merely, Lord, here I am. What is it that you would have me do? Linda, what about you regarding the word survivorship? I know you
I
had
thought
lots of
about,
support, or in my
yeah,
perspective, you had
yeah,
family around, but I also
yeah,
you're pretty private too. So
yeah. Well, I think for me, the word love is the love of God
Mhm.
that covers me. And um, as Patricia said, I know that also His grace is sufficient. And so I say that for me, it's the love of God that has kept me.
for sure, and continues to keep you. And
Mhm.
so, as we get ready to wrap up a little bit, I also want to ask two things. I still have two more questions for both of you, if you're okay with it. I
Mhm.
hope that you
It's
are.
fine. It's
One, how do
fine.
you continue to give hope and light to others who may still be fighting with either breast cancer or some other debilitating disease? Let me go to you first, Patricia.
I go back to the book of Philippians,
Mhm.
where it says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And so, no matter what it is that life presents us with, it's interesting because I have a girlfriend that's a nurse, and she was talking about the two worst things that she saw me go through, and neither one of them was cancer.
Oh, wow. That says something, Patricia.
Yeah, neither one of them was cancer, and it was like, yeah, that's true. And so I will say, yeah, that I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me in my weakness, he is made strong,
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
yes,
yeah,
right?
yes.
yeah.
Yeah,
And I think to me, you said a mouthful
Mhm.
to think that life can give you something more challenging
Mhm.
than even this. You
mhm,
know, folks who
Mhm.
are who have heard about it or who have experienced through people that they love, they may not think of that. So I appreciate you sharing that perspective because it could have been something different.
yeah,
Linda, what about you?
Well, I always believe that knowledge is power. I think the more you know about something, the more the more equipped you are to attack it. And as Patricia just said, I think that um, me having breast cancer, I think I was the first in my family, as far as I know.
Me too.
Um, it was for a purpose, and it was God's plan
Hmm.
because I have worked for many years with American Cancer and have been able to share my experience with other newly diagnosed women.
Hmm.
Um, we used to do reach to. It was a program that American Cancer had that was called Reach to Recovery, and you could only uh, be instrumental to women that were newly diagnosed if you were a year out of treatment.
mm,
Hmm.
And so I met a lot of interesting people. We even had little kits for different types of whether you had a lumpectomy or mastectomy or whatever, and was pamphlet in each one of those kits that spoke to whatever diagnosis you had received. And my last thing is that I was able to share with my next door neighbor during COVID. I was diagnosed with the DCIS and had to find where to get a prosthesis made or get a breast prosthesis to go in your bra. And also, um, uh, people don't know it, but if you have insurance, you can get, um, I think it's um, 2 or 4 bras a year.
Oh, wow.
And every 2 years, you can get a new prosthesis. But anyway, I was able to share that information with my next door neighbor because she was newly diagnosed, had to have a mastectomy, and I was able to share with her where to go to have a prosthesis done for her.
That's awesome because, like you said, information is power. And I
Yeah.
certainly want to share more information. I do have one last question for you, and that's what's the one thing that you want listeners to remember long after the show ends and long after they hear your voices? I'll start with you, Linda.
First of all, if you have a history, regardless of your age, you need to be screened. The second thing is that as you age, your risk factor goes up.
I didn't know
And
that.
I don't know if it has to do with your immune system or what it is, but just know that your risk factor goes up, and you can not only um, have mammograms, but know what your body, what is normal and abnormal for your body.
Mhm.
Because Patricia enumerated that early on, is that she saw something that looked different, and so know what's normal or abnormal, and also know how to do self breast exam.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What about you, Patricia?
So the thing that I would want people to walk away with is don't be afraid.
Mhm.
So often women, we think we're defined by our breasts. We think we're defined by our hair.
Mhm.
As Linda said earlier, her hair was her crown.
Mm-hmm.
And, we have to come to terms with the fact that life is more important than hair.
Oh
And
yes.
life is
Oh
more
yes.
important than breasts, right? There are
Mm-hmm.
many different
Mm-hmm.
ways that you
Oh
can
yeah.
have
Oh yeah.
reconstruction. You can have a
Mm-hmm.
prosthesis, you can have
Mm-hmm.
reconstructive surgery in multiple ways. So I have learned that I am not defined by my breast.
Amen.
Mm-hmm.
God defines who I am.
That's exactly.
And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm just ever thankful, but don't be afraid.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I've done many talks at my church because you'd be surprised in the Black African American women, the older women, it's a secret,
Mm.
Mhm.
and we need to stop. Um, we need to stop the silence. We need to talk about it
Absolutely.
because you never know who you might help. It may be that your next sister.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but as I said before, knowledge is power, and I think the more we know about something, the better we are able and equipped to fight it.
Absolutely. And I think you just said something, sis, that's really important because there were a lot of things that our older generations, heck, I've called my sister Patricia and said, why did mama tell me about menopause? And she said, because she was part of it. I was born when my mom was going through menopause. And so what's she going to tell me then? But back then, they didn't talk about these things. And I don't know if they felt that it was taboo or what. But I think that to your point, sis, the more we start to talk about these things now, even with our young daughters, nieces, sisters, cousins, what have you, friends, the less overwhelming it may become if they start to a situation where they have to go down that path and face it. And we
Right.
can do all that we can to be proactive
Mm-hmm.
with our self breast examinations, as well as just
Mm-hmm.
being aware so that we can
Mm-hmm.
support others who we love who might be dealing with it as well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I certainly want to take a moment to express my heartfelt thanks to both of you. You have been amazing guests to me. I thank you for your courage. I thank you for your wisdom and your willingness to speak life and truth
Mhm.
into this conversation. I hope you know that your voices remind us that awareness is more than a word. It's an
Mhm.
action, strength, and
Mhm.
hope in motion. And each story shared, each fact explained, and each word of encouragement today can inspire someone to take the next brave step that's necessary for them.
Mhm.
Thank you so much for sharing your stories with all of us today.
Thank you.
God bless.
Wow, 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 that's all I can say. This has been a tremendous opportunity to be able to share these phenomenal women with you and to be able to allow them to share their story and prayerfully, hopefully, allow you to glean some fantastic information and to be prepared to take good care of yourself. So, as we close today's conversation, let this be a reminder. Strength isn't just in the hospitals or waiting rooms, it's found in the hearts of everyday people who keep showing up, keep fighting, and keep believing in hope. Breast cancer may touch lives, but it does not define them. As you heard the lady say, it doesn't define their lives, right? It's just something that happens to them, but it doesn't define who they are. Only God can do that part. And so, what I would also want you to do is be mindful of many trusted organizations and websites. You have the American Cancer Society or ACS that provides causes, screenings, treatments, coping mechanisms, and support, as well as survivorship. You have the breastcancer.org site that you can go to. You also have other sites like the National Breast Cancer Foundation, NBCF, National Breast Cancer Foundation. You have the Susan G. Komen site that provides navigators and support as well as financial assistance and community resources to you. Another one is called Cancer Care, which focuses on support services, counseling, and support groups. And then, like I said, there's so many. I'll give you two more. One is Centers for Disease Control, the Living Beyond Breast Cancer. These are resources for people of all ages, whether those who have been newly diagnosed or whether they're in treatment or whether they have a part of survivorship. Just Google it and go out and see what is available for you because there's lots of information out there. You just have to, look for those details and be prepared to share and learn about that information. Your voices are important. So when you learn more, share more. Make sure that you're getting the information right and you're sharing it with those who need it around you. This has been a phenomenal experience for me, and I just pray that it has been for you because I believe we are certainly more alike than we are different. And when it comes to cancer, there's certainly no person that's more eligible or less. It is what it is. And so, for that, I hope you'll always remember that today is the first day for the rest of your life. Let the rest of your life be the best of your life. In all your ways, acknowledge God, and He will direct your path. Until next time, God bless.